DC The Voice, Alabama Prison Profiles. What's going on with y'all, man? Make sure y'all donate to the channel's Cash App and PayPal if you're feeling generous. Mess with our sponsor, PAX Los Angeles, in the description for the gas, edibles, vapes, merch, etc., man. Straight from Cali. Now, today, I'm going to be reacting to filmmakers Andrew Zarecki and Charlotte Kaufman discussing their new documentary on Alabama prisons called The Alabama Solution that was a huge hit and is making around in the news. That premiered at the 2025 LA Times Sundance Films Festival this year. The documentary will be available to the public in a few months, and it covers the conditions, violence, and other prison issues through the lenses of leaked cell phone footage and communications with currently incarcerated prisoners over a period of about 6 years, man. Let's hop right into their discussing of the documentary right now.
Well, I think we went in with open minds and wanted to, you rarely get the opportunity to go into a prison facility in Alabama. And I think we saw this as a great opportunity to be able to speak with some of the men, to just observe what we could around the facility, to learn what we could. But very quickly it became clear that there were only certain conversations that we were allowed to have, and that we weren't allowed to speak to the men alone. And I think that lack of access compelled us to keep investigating, to keep going, especially, what the men still were able to tell us, away from the prison officials. It was, we felt compelled to keep investigating.
All right, now that is true, man. It's hard to get in the prison systems here for documentaries. You almost always have to be a huge platform or publication, man, or at least affiliated with these huge platforms like the LA Times, for example, to get into the system here, man. The state is clearly not just openly forthcoming, like, yeah, come on in and film these deplorable conditions, man. No, man, I see, as you said, they wasn't leaving these people alone with prisoners, man. This ain't 1999 or the early 2000s prison documentaries, man. And I'm sure the COs was right there ready to confiscate them cameras and damn near hold them folks hostage if they didn't want to give it up. If they captured something that made the system/administration look bad that they didn't want getting out, man.
After the first scene in the film, there's a title card that explains that after your visit, you started getting outreach from inmates within the prison on contraband cell phones. And the footage from those calls that they're sending you is at the core of the film, and it's part of what it makes it so shocking and outrageous. Take me back to the first outreach that you got. Like, where were you? When did it happen? What was your reaction?
I mean, we were surprised when we went in there at the proliferation of cell phones. The fact that Alabama's prisons are so extraordinarily understaffed and under-resourced means that the prisons are often operating with a very skeleton crew of people. So you could have a 1,400-bed facility, and that normally would be staffed with, a few hundred officers, and maybe on a weekend there are 20 officers there. So that indicates, A, that there's a very low level of understanding even by correctional officers. There are large areas of the prison that they don't spend any time in. So the ability to speak to these men on these cell phones, which are, in my view, largely brought in by the officers, there's a big trade in the cell phones. That was just a surprise to us, as much as I think it has been people seeing the film and saying, how is that even possible that they have these phones?
All right, more facts, right? The cell phone abundance, the skeleton crew staffing, man. There's supposed to be hundreds of staff at some of these prisons. As you can see, they got 20, 30 motherfuckers on staff sometimes, man. Also discussing the areas where COs currently or don't venture off to too often by themselves, man. You heard Cartoon talk about COs venturing to the back of the dorm and getting pelted with batteries, state soap, boots, and shit like that, for example, man. So if you go back there alone or in these certain blind spots, you may not make it back to the cube to sleep in one piece, man. LOL. It's dangerous for the officers as well as the inmates, man. And the staff Define brings in a large chunk of contraband cell phones, man. I'm not hearing it any other way. Yeah, motherfuckers throw stuff over the fence, but they not getting away with it like these horses, as they call them in these facilities. You know what I'm saying? Stopping by at the gas station every day and grabbing 5, 10 burner cell phones for $20, $30, coming in there, selling them for hundreds to $1,000, man. Craziness. There are too many phones. Bruh, them call. If you don't answer the wall phone, 5 minutes ain't going by. Here they come texting you from a random number. Hey, bruh, I had called you. I need you to do this, this, and that. Or you got this. Shit get annoying, man.
When you started, I mean, one of the things that watching it, like, really disturbed and upset me were just what they would show you about what the living conditions were like. Flooded floors, overflowing toilets, rats everywhere. Were you that shocked? Like, was that your response when you started seeing those images coming from your sources on the inside?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Department of Justice had put out a very in-depth report about their own investigation into Alabama's prison system. But it's a very different experience reading the facts and reading the findings versus actually seeing it. There's something, you know, that makes you really understand what it's like to live in that environment when you can actually see it. And I think that's why prisons are so secret. That's why we're not allowed to see in, and we can only read papers about what's actually happening, because when you do see it, you know, it becomes a lot less tolerable.
And once again, man, as we know, living conditions are deplorable, man. Rats, roaches, general public don't be having no idea. DOJ report is in depth, but you gotta see this shit to believe it, man. They don't want y'all to know. You gotta see the flooded dorms, busted pipes, busted windows, homeless prisoners sleeping on the floor in bathrooms and common areas, insects in the food, rodents collected in water bottles, to really get the full effect, man, of just how bad the conditions really are with some of these facilities falling apart.
Over the course of this 6-year process, you formed these really close, long-standing, sort of trusting relationships with your main sources inside the facilities. Now with the film coming out, and as the film explores, they are at risk of reprisal from correctional officers and higher up. What were your ethical concerns about revealing their identities, their specific identities, and what were your conversations like with them about the risks and their ultimate willingness to undertake those risks?
I mean, we thought a lot about that issue because obviously the more you get to know people that are in that situation, the more you recognize their vulnerability and the more you feel connected to them. There's no avoiding that. And it was kind of a beautiful thing about the film that you get to see the humanity in these people who are often seen by society through a very different lens. So we always thought about it and spoke extensively to them about it. These are men who had been working on their own for many years to get the word out on the crisis in this prison system. So when we first started talking, they were very clear about their, you know, we were part of their agenda in a way, right? It was very important for them to do this work. And so we were kind of there to ride along. So it was a symbiotic process. Now, of course, because the film is coming out, they're still known, they're very well known to the authorities inside, and they have been retaliated against in the past. So we're concerned, we continue to be concerned about it, and there's been a organization that's created a defense committee to help them if that does come to pass.
Now, absolutely, sources are facing retaliation by staff, and it's inevitable in whatever direct or indirect microaggressive way they choose to go about it, man. The corrupt author says that officers ain't risking their job, especially if an inmate's already pushed paperwork on them, or lawsuits as they call it, or complaints on the administration. They ain't risking their job to retaliate. I'm not so damn sure, man. You know what I'm saying? You got folks like Nard Jimerson getting his ass whooped, Matt taken, moved around from prison to prison at the drop of the dime, in and out the hole, just for getting the word out about what's going on inside with conditions and the violence and the corruption, filming, sleeping staff, inmates in the yard past lockdown, etc., man. Feeling inmates filming inmates on death's door for medical neglect. The list goes on, man. Also, another honorable mention of an advocate that has lost a lot from this shit is Mr. Robert Earl Counsel. You know what I'm saying, bruh? They didn't beat that man out of his head for this shit, man. Don't get me started on the threats and retaliation against advocating prisoners' families and loved ones on the outside, man, by these officers. That ain't got nothing to do with what these prisoners have going on the inside, man. You pretty much have to be ready to be retaliated against if you're going to stand up, man. I had this issue with trying to get current inmates on the show. If you're not ready to go to locked up, don't even hit me up about trying to come on this bitch if you locked up, man. If a couple nights away from your dope, cigarettes, commissary food, and all that ain't worth trying to help the kids, man, don't even worry about it, man. They say you want to help the kids. What's the couple nights in the hole, man? Favorite quote that I came up with doing this: advocacy does not come without consequences. They will have their pound of flesh for you trying to invoke change.
With this very unique process where your sources are separated from you by the divide of the sort of prison walls, but you're talking to them regularly, and you're probably, you know, like this struck me during the narrative about the prison strike and then the breaking of the strike, is you're both at one level getting more information than the general public is getting through the news media, but you're also not close enough to it to really feel like there's any kind of control that you can exert. What is that like for you, you know, like emotionally or creatively as filmmakers, since that's not the usual process?
Yeah, I think it's a very intense experience to follow along and watch this incredibly inspiring and moving movement of the strike, but then, you know, also watch how the state responds. I think it's, you know, it's a privilege to be able to have these extended conversations with all of our participants, and but at the same time, you know, that's why the film is so urgent, because they're at risk and they're doing their activism and their activity regardless of this film, and that's also what puts them at risk. So it's you know, they've been retaliated against for their activism for like 2 decades now.
These are men who have been the victims of violence in the system, and often violence by people who are allegedly supposed to look out for their safety. And so the ability to, you know, to have that kind of like up close contact with them and recognize the bravery that they're showing in being able to share this, and it's such a high level of trust, I think, that had to be established for them to allow us to sort of ride along and see this incredibly unique kind of protest. But it's really important to recognize, despite the violence that they have been subjected to, all of their work is nonviolent. They're extremely thoughtful about the importance of nonviolent action, and the fact that the state, which has all the machinery of government and all kinds of special military equipment, can't find a way to respond to them except through violence, is really an example of how the system is pretty topsy-turvy.
No, I agree with that, man. These guys do need to be celebrated for sacrificing their own release dates, if they even have one, to try to affect change in the system, man. Just know that we here at APP, as well as the families of incarcerated, see you and appreciate your work, man, no matter the criticism y'all get, man, as well as these fine folks for getting more truth out to the public, man. They are correct. Many protests and actions by inmates have been nonviolent, strikes, work stoppages, etc. The state absolutely has no recourse to prevent this type of thing from getting out at this point, other than, you know, retaliating against the inmates and scaring the rest of them. You know, you see what we did to bro. You want to keep your eye. You know what I'm saying? Why do y'all think their only solution is to silence the inmates by spending all this money on cell phone jammers and shit like that? I talked to bro last week. He said they got dogs now that sniff out cell phones. So they came in and down batted the whole dorm, man. Crazy that they fix shit. It won't be nothing to report on, man. SMH.
The title of the film comes from an oft-used phrase by Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, who isn't interviewed in the film. If you got the chance to get her on the record, on camera, what would you ask her?
The first question I would ask her is whether she visits the prisons. And I'm quite sure that she would say, well, on one occasion, yeah, something like that. I mean, I think anything that we could do, I'd love to hear your answer on this, but my first question, we'd probably both be eager to have that conversation, but my first question would be to try to really understand how insulated she must be from what's happening to her own citizens of her own state, for her to just keep proposing solutions that are not solutions.
Yeah, I think that would along the same lines. And also I would ask her, can you actually let us in? I would ask her to give us access and say, like, can you, we were able to make this film because we had some really brave individuals who took great risk to have conversations with us, to share material with us. But I would ask her, what would it take for you to actually allow transparency and for the media to be able to come in and talk to the men freely, and to bring cameras in freely?
There's a fact that we've sort of been talking about how to convey, but it's sort of an extraordinary statistic that I'm pretty sure the governor doesn't know. Of many statistics, I think the governor's not familiar with.
Oh, yeah, man, I'm going to have to call back on that one. I think Mima does know about what the hell going, man, but it's one of these deals where if she does visit the prison system and they know in advance, man, and they roll out the red carpet for her, make sure everything's in tip-top shape for her and the people that come with her, guaranteed not even our governor, Trump, probably can't even pull up to a prison unannounced in Alabama on a random weekday and be allowed entry. Not at all. You know what I'm saying? She might not make it back, out that motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? It's surprising because our governor is with the bullshit. She don't care about niggas suffering. SMH.
But when you learn about the work programs, essentially forced labor that happen inside the system, of the 20,000 men who are in that system, many of them are caused to work inside the prisons, outside the prisons, on road crews around the state, and even at McDonald's and many other companies, where the state is putting them to work, and then the corrections department is gathering the money for that work, and the men are getting a tiny sliver of that. What's extraordinary is that the people who are allowed to work and who are considered safe enough to be in the community, interacting, you see some of them in the film, walking around the state fair, walking around the governor's mansion, those people are less likely statistically to be paroled than the people who are at the next highest level of concern for safety or something. The people who are considered safer are less likely to be let out, arguably because they are more valuable as people who can be put to work.
Wow.
Yeah, and to ask her to comment on that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a fascinating statistic, and I think it's the kind of thing that I don't think anybody's doing that math, because I don't think it's of great concern to them, partly because they too are isolated from being able to see what's happening in their own system.
Yeah, man, like I said, high government and all that behind the wall, it's you know what I'm saying, until it's parents that look like theirs or prominent members of society's kids get run over in there, man, then they want to do something, man. The administration is at these oversight committee meetings. They hear from these families of husbands, fathers, sons, sisters, mothers, daughters crying out for justice for their loved ones, man, that have been swallowed up by the Alabama Department of Corrections in one way or another, man. The government is not insulated. They know what's going on. Lastly, the labor, man, like I said, niggas is safe enough to go to work for the corporations that the department is in bed with and has contracts through the state convict leasing system, but you're not safe enough to go to the crib and be with your family and vote and become a member, successful member of society again, man. You know what I'm saying? More people coming home from max camps than worker leaves. What kind of shit is that? SMH. And there y'all have it, man. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. The film will be available for public consumption in a few months. Shout out these individuals and the LA Times for shedding light on the issues of our state's prison system. The more publications, the merrier. They said they've been working on the doc 6 years. Hopefully it makes an even bigger impact. And we'll be back here when it comes out to give my input on it again, man. But yeah. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. Mess with the sponsor, PAX Los Angeles, linked in the description. Donate to the channel's Cash App and PayPal if you're feeling it. DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profile, out the gate.